Ukraine has officially seized the initiative on the southern lines, marking a critical strategic inflection point in the conflict. While the world watched Zaporizhia, the operational focus shifted suddenly to Mariupol. This is not a simple tactical adjustment. This city beats at the very heart of the vital arteries keeping the Russian war machine alive. The wind has changed direction. The veterans of the unparalleled 2022 resistance at the Azovstal steel plant have returned to sacred land to settle their unfinished business. The Azov brigade is back to end the era of the open-air prison, yet their re-entry defies every existing military expectation. What radical tactical evolution have these survivors brought back to the ruins of Mariupol that will allow them to dismantle a city-wide open-air prison without a traditional frontal assault? To understand the magnitude of this shift, one must recognize that we are witnessing a profound doctrine crisis for the occupying forces. The traditional expectation of a bloody, street-by-street urban reclamation has been discarded in favor of a much more sophisticated strategy. This is about the total operational erasure of the enemy's ability to sustain themselves within a hostile environment. By focusing on the vital arteries of the city, Azov is exploiting a strategic inflection point that the Kremlin never anticipated. They are not fighting for territory yet. They are fighting for the absolute paralysis of the rear. This calculated approach widens the information gap for the defenders, who are left guarding empty gates while their lifeblood is drained away. On May 8, 2026, the message was made clear through United 24. Azov has returned. This is no symbolic gesture of revenge but a massive deployment providing a vital asymmetric advantage to between 90,000 and 130,000 Ukrainian troops. Every logistics line they sever in the background directly translates to a saved life on the front. They have fundamentally altered the fate of the corridor connecting the southern lines to Crimea. However, they didn't arrive with the expected thunder of massive tank convoys or heavy armored columns. Instead, they have initiated a new era of patrolling their home from the sky. What deadlier and much stealthier unconventional doctrine has Azov adopted that allows them to paralyze a city without ever setting foot in a traditional tank convoy? The notion of a city-wide siege without ground troops represents a terminal doctrine crisis for traditional forces. Azov's asymmetric advantage renders static defenses obsolete, turning the entire region into an invisible strike zone. The defenders are trapped in a paradox where their own fortifications become their tombs. High-stakes tension mounts as the enemy realizes the very air around them has been weaponized. This psychological pressure creates a gap in intelligence that the Kremlin cannot bridge. The result is a total strategic inflection point that redefines modern combat. The answer is a transition to 21st century warfare, patrolling from the sky through an operational network penetrating exactly 160 kilometers deep. This creates a massive strategic circle, placing every assembly area and ammunition depot within absolute firing range. Leading this effort are Swiftbeat Hornet drones developed by former Google Chief Executive Officer Eric Schmidt's company, Perennial Autonomy. These AI-driven monsters are engineered for total operational erasure. What untraceable signature do these AI Hornet drones possess that allows them to bypass the world's most advanced electronic warfare shields and loiter invisibly over the very heart of the Russian command? The prospect of bypassing top-tier electronic warfare represents a total doctrine crisis for the Kremlin's established protocols. For years, the Russian military boasted that its invisible signal shields would render any unmanned aerial vehicle useless before it reached the line of contact. This capability was supposed to ensure that their permanent military fortresses remained impenetrable sanctuaries. However, the reality of operational erasure has arrived, exposing a fatal flaw in the assumption that traditional jamming can stop a decentralized intelligence network. The gap in defense is widening as commanders realize their most expensive assets are effectively blind to this new reality. The untraceable signature is achieved through the integration of Starlink satellite terminals and AI-supported target recognition. These drones are completely unaffected by signal jammers because they bypass the standard radio links that enemy electronic warfare is designed to disrupt. Equipped with 5-kilogram warheads, they maintain surgical precision up to 160 kilometers. They process a massive database in real time, distinguishing a military logistic struck from a civilian vehicle within seconds without any human intervention. This asymmetric advantage allows Azov to scour every inch of Mariupol, turning the sky into a hunting ground. Using the loiter and strike tactic, these silent hunters wait for hours, calculating the perfect moment of vulnerability. What specific mathematical trigger point do these AI hunters calculate to ensure that even a split-second delay at a bridge or intersection results in the total incineration of a multi-million-dollar convoy? The mathematical trigger point is the precise moment when the laws of physics and predatory artificial intelligence logic converge at a tactical bottleneck. These machines calculate the exact deceleration rates of heavy logistics trucks as they enter critical zones. The tension is absolute because the target never knows when the automated countdown to their destruction has begun. This creates an environment of total psychological paralysis for every driver in the supply chain. The information gap widens as the enemy realizes that even their most routine movements are being processed by a cold digital hunter. The reveal is the loiter and strike protocol, where the drone waits for the maximum point of vulnerability before diving mercilessly from the sky. Beyond the roads, we are witnessing the operational erasure of fixed infrastructure. Intelligence has identified two massive bases built in March and April of 2025. One was a primary fuel hub, the other a colossal assembly area for armor. These were permanent military fortresses with reinforced concrete and heavy electronic shields. Yet these shields failed completely. Azov's drones penetrated the heart of these bastions, proving no rear is safe anymore. This represents a terminal doctrine crisis for a military built on centralized supply and static defenses. What incredible nightmare did Azov descend with in April 2026 to shatter the logistics paradise of Donetsk, a zone the Russians believed was eternally unreachable? The concept of a logistics paradise relies on the psychological assumption of an unreachable rear. When an adversary shatters that sanctuary, it triggers a profound doctrine crisis regarding the viability of the entire front. For the 1st Donetsk Army Corps, supply line security was a foundational pillar of their defensive strategy. Suddenly seeing that pillar pulverized created an information gap where commanders could no longer trust their own geography. This high-stakes tension forces a total re-evaluation of what constitutes a safe zone in the era of high-tech attrition. The hidden danger was the total operational erasure of their strategic depth. The nightmare arrived via swarm tactics, where multiple drones attacked simultaneously in perfect coordination as Azov units descended. On critical junctions near the Donetsk Ring Road, including Zers and Reka and Strabisha, massive convoys were ambushed at narrow bridge crossings, leaving the 1st Donetsk Army Corps without ammunition or fuel for days. This asymmetric advantage shattered the perception of a safe rear, yet their capabilities go far beyond unmanned systems in the sky. What brutal, step-by-step ground evolution occurred in the shadows of February 2026 that proved Azov had mastered a terrifying form of ring of steel hand-to-hand combat far beyond the reach of their drones? Urban combat under aerial dominance provides a refined asymmetric advantage, creating a terrifying doctrine crisis for defenders. This ground-level mastery ensures the operational erasure of entrenched forces. The hidden danger lies in the seamless integration of surgical reconnaissance and elite execution. These units operate within a psychological vacuum where the enemy is blinded and methodically dismantled. This creates an information gap that forces the adversary into total reactive paralysis. In February 2026, the village of Zalokolatas was cleared house by house over 21 days. Azov used a ring of steel and night vision to force exactly 18 prisoners to surrender within 24 hours. This strategic inflection point has now evolved into a theater-wide pincer movement. The 118th, 65th, and 47th Mechanized Brigades are squeezing the front, while the 3rd and 10th Air Assault Brigades infiltrate the rear. What grand strategic equation has been activated by these elite air assault units that will transform the Russian army's largest and best-equipped forces into a hungry, thirsty, and ammunition-less mass of survivors in the coming days? The grand strategic equation is a brutal mathematical certainty that renders even the largest army obsolete through a total doctrine crisis. When a force of hundreds of thousands is cut off from its lifeblood, they cease to be soldiers and become a liability. This is the high-stakes reality of the logistical death spiral where an asymmetric advantage translates into starvation. The hidden danger is not the bullet you see, but the fuel and water that never arrives. This creates an information gap where commanders are leading ghosts who can no longer fire back. The reveal is the transformation of Crimea into a massive, isolated logistics island. By placing every meter of the land bridge stretching through Berdansk, Milo, and Hennik under medium-range fire control, Ukraine has reached a strategic inflection point. Russian military analysts like Jiv and the prominent blog Ribber have bitterly confessed to this reality. On May 22, 2026, the Kremlin was forced to officially admit the land corridor was compromised, banning all civilian and commercial traffic. With the sea route simultaneously paralyzed by unmanned surface vehicles in the Black Sea, the land bridge has become a dead end. What secret $12 billion miracle infrastructure project did the Kremlin build in the shadows to bypass this total blockade, and how did a small group of underground partisans render it useless before it even opened? The Kremlin believed a $12 billion shadow railway could bypass the blockade and resolve their Doctrine crisis. This was a high-stakes gamble to restore a lifeline hidden from conventional strikes. However, the information gap was fatal because they ignored the enemy already within their ranks. The hidden danger of an underground insurgency is that they see the blueprint before the first rail is laid. This creates a psychological trap where the solution becomes the primary target. Atesh partisans sabotage the signal infrastructure and control centers of the Nudin-Yetsk-Mariupol line, rendering the investment useless. This failure accelerates the operational erasure of the occupation. While billions turn to ash, the 58th Guards and 810th Naval Infantry perpetrators of the 2022 massacres are melting away. Even the 9th Guards Motorized Rifle Brigade, utilized as a transit force, finds no sanctuary in the city. Their asymmetric advantage has evaporated, and we have reached a strategic inflection point where their very presence is a liability. What final psychological ultimatum is being broadcast via the drone network to the 58th Guards and 810th Naval Infantry that suggests their transit base in Mariupol is about to become a terminal dead zone from which there is no retreat? The ultimatum broadcast via the Hornet network represents a terminal Doctrine crisis. This signature signals the total operational erasure of the enemy's sanctuary, creating a fatal information gap for the 58th Guards and 810th Naval Infantry. They are trapped in a cleansing zone where any movement invites a strike. The reveal is that the drones over Azovstal are announcing the city's true owners have returned. Mariupol is now a drone shooting range severing the Russian jugular. This strategic inflection point empowers 90,000 to 130,000 soldiers to advance. The will of steel from airless tunnels 4 years ago now rules the sky with an asymmetric advantage. What ultimate sacrifice is the Kremlin now debating in its final hours? Is it the total abandonment of Crimea to save the southern front, or is an unstoppable deadly blow already descending that will end the war before that decision can even be made? The internal debate within the Kremlin has reached a fever pitch as the binary choice between sacrificing Crimea or facing a total southern collapse becomes unavoidable. This delay in decision-making is fueling a terminal logistical suffocation that threatens to leave their entire force paralyzed in place. The resulting information gap leaves commanders debating theoretical maps while their frontline units scavenge for basic survival necessities. We are witnessing the final moments of a political fantasy colliding with the cold reality of operational erasure. This creates an environment of total psychological paralysis, where the fear of the deadly blow is as destructive as the strikes themselves. The tension is no longer about winning battles, but about whether a coordinated retreat is physically possible before the lines dissolve completely. The reality is that the unstoppable deadly blow is the cumulative effect of total air dominance and the severance of every land and sea artery. This strategy doesn't just force the gates of Crimea. It rips them off their hinges and shakes the foundation of the occupation to its core. This is a strategic inflection point where traditional muscle power is rendered obsolete by asymmetric advantage and sharp brilliance. It is the most flawless military march on the path to ultimate victory, proving that when you destroy the rear, the front simply ceases to exist. As the logistical graveyard claims the last of their supplies, the occupiers have nowhere left to hide. In the face of this absolute dominance in the sky, what secret, high-risk counterstrike is the Russian command hiding that might be their only alternative to the total abandonment of Crimea, or has the deadly blow already landed? Behind closed doors,